Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, I've been hanging out with the cool kids.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
This is the
They changed your hair.
yeah, this is the what it looks like day after awesome flower crown and braiding, courtesy of the International Fresh Produce Association's Joy of Fresh activation at South by Southwest here in Austin, Texas. I also grabbed some flowers on my way out because why not? They had a huge event. South by this year was, of course, a little bit smaller than the last time everyone attended back in 2019. But it was still a super lively, super crowded event. And it seemed like everybody wanted to be part of the swag giveaway that IFPA had, the flowers. I mean, you could walk down the street and tell you were getting closer to Rainy Street just by virtue of people carrying flowers. They gave away 10,000 small bouquets of flowers like you would pick up at a grocery store, just to reinforce the joy of fresh. And then of course at the activation there were also baskets of fruits and vegetables that they told me they were refilling every 30 minutes, and people were flocking to them and eating them, and it was amazing.
That's awesome. It's such a different kind of attendance for the produce industry. It's certainly not a produce event, but I know their justification before the pandemic was getting into new channels to increase consumption and awareness. And I'm glad to see it's still continuing, and hopefully it leads us somewhere, the biggest place the industry can go, which is more awareness and raising consumption.
There was definitely, I mean, when you go to a festival like this, it's really hard to track down what's the business importance of being there. Because some of the sessions, a lot of the food related sessions, I really feel like the produce industry could work to help guide the conversations a little further toward the future of food, and not just the future of food waste. Because a lot of the conversations, and of course food waste is an incredibly important aspect of the food industry. It touches almost every part of the supply chain, from growing all the way through into consumer. So that is an important and necessary conversation to have. But I did talk to a couple of folks and who went to some of the food related sessions and thought, you know what, they really didn't talk about consumption and flavor. And those are two things that I really think the produce industry needs to push on getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables, is that they taste great, they're good for you, and we need to push more consumption. So that's certainly some opportunity to help guide and shape some of the sessions going forward, and to be a part of some of these conversations, because it's very cool to be in and cool probably isn't the right word, the kids are using it these days, but to be at a session with the head of food for Google talking right there. And if you get up and ask a question, I saw 2 or 3 different people, especially produce related people, that had something to say, and this person says, I need to talk to you afterward. How else are you going to get access to somebody like that than at a conference like this? So there's a lot of different reasons to be there. The promotional aspect of it was one of my favorite parts of it. And I mean, so the Joy of Fresh was amazing, but it wasn't as cool as Cheeselandia. Remember the cheese? It was almost there though, but there was no Cheeselandia this year. I actually talked to somebody who had waited 2 hours in line to get a couple of bags of Cheetos at the Cheetos experience, and she was jealous of the flower crown that I had. So there's that for one small anecdote.
She should be.
Well, back in the office, we had a ton of news, one of which was, holy cow, GrubMarket strikes again. And this time, one of the most recognizable names in the West Mexico import deal.
Right. You and I both know Sunfed really well. It goes back a long time. They're a multi-generation company. I know I've been in their offices before. I see them every year in Nogales. I guess, I mean, GrubMarket has acquired many companies, many well-known companies. This just happens to be one that you and I know pretty well. Yeah, we're waiting to see how it's going to change. I mean, every time they've made acquisitions in the past couple of years, they've said we're leaving the leadership at the company and they're going to try to streamline and find some value in that acquisition and improve their digital and technological processes with GrubMarket software. So that will be something we'll be keeping an eye on. It's another huge acquisition. I mean, basically, we should get used to seeing these every month or so, apparently. And that's what GrubMarket said at the end of last year.
Yeah, they've raised, what was it, 100 million, or was it more than that? I mean, lots of dollar signs. They've raised lots of dollar signs, and they've come out and said that we are buying lots of companies. Don't be surprised. And yet, even so, I'm surprised to see a company like SunFed get acquired by GrubMarket. So definitely one to watch. Definitely will give us an idea of what the Borg of GrubMarket is going to be like going forward. It seems like resistance is futile for some of these companies going forward. So really huge news in that part, but we don't have a whole lot of details at the moment, but we'll definitely keep watching. Another story that hits pretty well for us was actually Richard Smoley's analysis of what's going on in Ukraine and how that could be affecting both the produce industry, and one of them is something where it's going to hit hard as far as banana pricing goes, and then fertilizer pricing as well. What do we have from those?
Well, we should start off by saying we are in the media and we see how the media has been covering this conflict in Ukraine, and it is very weird. It's basically the first conflict that we've seen with kind of our modern media. Whoa, I lost a blind there. With social media being involved, we have different countries' media. There's obviously a ton of propaganda from all media angles. So our readers are seeing this from a consumer perspective and not knowing what to make of it. But we're trying to deliver some news that actually affects our readers' businesses, and two of which are bananas and fertilizer prices. Richard wrote one of these early in the week about how Ecuadorian bananas find that Russia is a bigger market for their bananas than the US. And with the trade problems going on, it's going to create, I mean, basically there were ships of bananas en route that weren't going to be able to be delivered. So it is going to affect the overall market. And that's kind of one of the big pictures here is when you have sanctions and a conflict, that's just going to disrupt the supply chain. And so you're going to see how it shakes out. There's going to be excess bananas in certain markets because this huge market won't be fulfilled. So that'll be something that we'll want to keep in mind as we follow this. And then the other story is fertilizer, and Russia is a huge producer of fertilizer, and it's absolutely a global market. The US is a huge exporter and importer of fertilizer, and that's something that we're not going to see the effects of until years down the road, maybe.
Well, and so fertilizer has already been like prices were already skyrocketing for fertilizer before this happened. So this just creates a longer tail for that problem, probably.
Well, not only that, but the energy factor. I mean, the mainstream media has covered a lot of the business angle to this conflict as what it's doing in the energy market. And the energy market does have effects on the produce industry, but the energy market is also very intertwined with the fertilizer market. For instance, natural gas is used to produce ammonia, which goes into different fertilizers. I mean, you and I are not fertilizer experts, and our market is not the growing side of the industry. So forgive us for not being experts. But we know growers use fertilizer. This is affecting the supply chain. Looking into this story will kind of give you an angle on some of the effects that it'll have, and it'll have effects down the road. Just like energy, more domestic production would be very good for American citizens and businesses.
Well, even one of the sessions that I attended at South by Southwest was discussing the longer and short-term challenges in the transportation and logistics industries, and the guy who was presenting, who is a futurist, was talking about how we've got a push toward electric cars, and we've got a push toward a lot of electrified vehicles. And we also saw a demonstration of one of those piloted little robots that delivers food in another session. And all of that stuff relies on rare earth metals. And a lot of the mining for rare earth metals is coming from China and Russia. So there's a finite resource of those. So it's actually going to put constraints on the markets. But it was really cool to see the little robot drive through the session as we were talking. I'll be writing a couple of stories and based on my experiences at South by Southwest, just to
Did it
talk
remind
about,
you of the little car that delivered the soccer ball to the center of the Euro matches last summer?
Yeah,
the little Volkswagen.
when we couldn't have people in there to have the little,
we couldn't. Ball. We didn't
go through. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Weekend Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
And happy St. Patrick's Week.
Yes. Happy St. Patrick's Week. I pulled my green out here too.
I have
mine's got a grackle.
Soccer jersey, which is Irish themed.
It's Irish themed, but isn't that a Scottish club?
It is, but this Glasgow club has roots in the Irish community and Catholic.
My kid's got that jersey too, though, so he's going to wear it to soccer training today.
He should.